Good evening, Sandra. How are you?
I'm good, and good morning to you.
And it's Monday with you, and it's Sunday evening with me. So we're on different days again. So here we
Yes.
are. So, what have you been up to this week?
This week I've been working on Elizabeth and doing a bit of research on a few things.
Yes,
But other than that, it's been a pretty quiet week.
good. Have you had plenty of stitching time?
Yes, Elizabeth is progressing lovely,
Oh, that's
nicely.
great. I'm looking forward to your next sneak peek.
Yes, beautiful.
It is. She's a lovely sampler. I know that all the stitches are just going to love her. Today, Sigrid, who, for people who are watching, is another designer at Hands Across the Sea Samplers, has shared a sneak peek of her current model that she's stitching. And this model, her name is Sophia, which is your granddaughter's name. And
Yes.
today, Sigrid has shown this lovely shot of some of the flowers that form the border. And she said that there are 77 flowers that make up this border, and not one are the same. So, gosh,
My goodness,
yeah, I know that's a stitch that's going to keep you on your toes.
that is.
Yes, and her stitching is exquisite as always.
Yeah, she's a beautiful stitcher.
Absolutely. This week, you'll be pleased to hear that I've had 2 stitching sessions, which has been unusual for me in the last couple of weeks because I've had
Oh, that's
really
wonderful.
no stitching time. So I'm just going to show a little sneak peek of my current project. And this girl's name is Sarah, and I am nearly finished. I think if I could have about 5 evenings stitching, she'll be a finished model. So that's really exciting.
No, it's lovely. She's a beautiful sampler as well.
She is, isn't she? So and the other thing I've done this week, I've been to the framers and I've picked up 2 models. Your
Oh,
beautiful
wonderful.
model of
Oh,
we call her
yeah.
Hannah. And she looks absolutely gorgeous, Sandra. You know, I showed you some photographs. You love her frame, don't you?
Yes, yes, no, she's beautiful.
She
She's a
is, isn't
beautiful.
she? And
Yes, something special.
yes, very special. And in fact, when I was at the framers and I went in to pick up the 2 samplers, obviously I asked them to unwrap the bubble wrap so I could have a look at them. And there were some people in the shop and they were all oohing and ahhing over them. So the other sampler that I picked up was another Sarah, and this Sarah has been stitched by Boomer, who is a fantastic stitcher, and I have shown this sneak peek on Facebook, but I've shown a little bit more besides the birds. I've just shown a little glimpse of the border, which is just fantastic, and that one's got hundreds and hundreds of flowers in. And charting that was an experience, as you know, because I know that stitchers really worry when they're stitching a border, is it going to meet up? Well, as a reproductionist, you also worry if your border doesn't meet up. And as you know, I was 1 thread off on this
Yes.
border, and I just kept on looking and looking and looking, and I couldn't find it. And as you know, in the end, I deleted practically all the border and started again. So, yeah, that was quite an experience. And you had to listen to me every evening going, I
Yes,
can't find
yes.
that one stitch. So,
Stitching wise and charting wise.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, Now, the other thing that we've been doing this week, or we've been sharing via the internet, is Anne Sampler, which is not one that we've reproduced, and it's probably one that we won't be reproducing. But she's a very beautiful sampler that I've had in my collection for quite some time. And this sampler has been full of surprises because when she arrived and we unpacked her, she was the one that had belonged to Roddy McDowall, the film star. And for people who are listening, I remember Roddy McDowall from the Lassie films, and you remember him from
How Green Was My
Valley, which is always a tearjerker, that film.
Every time I watch that movie, I burst out crying. It's set in Wales.
I know, yes, yeah.
Oh, it's just wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a John Ford movie, and it's just black and white, but it's just a beautiful movie, but very sad.
Yes. And of course, sorry?
Actually, if anybody wants to watch it, it's on YouTube.
Really?
They can watch it. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, anybody's got a box of shoes ready.
And of course, later in life, he was in Planet of the Apes, which is totally different from the Lassie films and How Green Is My Valley. But anyway, this sampler has been full of surprises because, as you know, when I took the sampler out of the frame, tucked away in the back was a drawing. And this is a beautiful pencil drawing of a house in Switzerland, and it's recorded that it was the Campagna Belvedere in Lausanne, and Lausanne is by the shores of Lake Geneva, I believe.
Yes.
And I know a lady who stitches that lives in Switzerland, and I asked her the word campagne because in French I would associate that with the countryside, but she did say to me that it was probably a hotel, the Campagna Belvedere, and of course Belvedere is an English word which I have always known to be spelt with an E, not an I, but when I researched it on the internet, it can be spelt both ways, and it means somewhere that you view something from. And we can see in this picture that there is a structure on the roof that you can use to sort of sit and observe. So maybe that hotel was near the shores of Lake Geneva. We just don't know. Yeah, but I wondered, I think probably the fact that it was tucked in the back of this sampler, maybe that the young girl, when she grew up, went to Lausanne and maybe she stayed in this hotel and she sketched it, and that is her work. It's a possibility, a strong possibility. Yeah.
Yes.
So now when we spent a night on Skype researching this, we actually sort of found out that Lausanne was a stopping place for the English aristocracy in the late 1700s and 1800s when they were on the Grand Tour. And Georgiana, the Duchess of Devonshire, stayed there. So, I wonder if our young girl who stitched her sampler was somebody who was on the Grand Tour, or maybe she honeymooned there.
Yes.
Yeah.
All things.
Or she could have been a maid going there.
Might have been like a companion, like in Rebecca.
Yes, you never know. But the interesting thing about this sampler, and to be honest, it was what caught my eye with the sampler initially, was it actually records not only the name of the school that she went to where she stitched her sampler, but it records that it was a boarding school, and it gives the full address of the boarding school. And what was really, really odd, that when we looked to see where this school was, lo and behold, it was right next to Tabernacle Walk, where Carolyn Blow lived, the sampler we looked at last week, and right by where the Uffendale sisters lived in Castle Street. So that's 3 samplers on the trot now that come from a very small area of London. It's quite amazing, isn't it?
Well, there's a saying, 6 6 degrees of separation. So
Yeah,
we've got 3.
that's right. And the best
And
things in
3
life
girls.
come in threes.
Yes.
Yes. So there we are. I was trying to get an impression of Anne and Anne's life, and I always like to sort of imagine what they were dressing in. So I had a look at fashion plates in 1797 when she stitched her sampler, and the fashion was so lovely. It was all the sort of the Empire line dresses and with the bonnets with all the feathers. So
That period with dresses is quite stunning.
Absolutely. Well, it's Jane Austen, isn't it? The Jane Austen
yes.
period. So
yes,
yeah, so
absolutely period.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. So
yeah,
it's really interesting to sort of visualize what she may have looked like, or at least how she dressed. The other thing is, I was wondering about boarding schools and about why a girl would be sent to a boarding school in this period. And it was quite interesting because you and I are both huge Jane Austen fans. And
yes.
Jane Austen's father ran a boarding school from the vicarage for young boys. And Jane and her sisters were sent to boarding school. And I think Jane actually first went to boarding school when she was 7 years old.
Yes.
So, you know, and the Austen family, they weren't hugely rich, were they?
No.
They were genteel.
Yes, and usually in those days with like the Reverend, he would have taken boys in to help supplement their income.
That's right,
and,
yes.
And he would teach the young men, would give them an education, and their families would pay for them.
Yes.
Their board and things like that.
Yeah, but the boys would have received a very different education to the girls.
Oh, they would have.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
The boys' education would be academic, and the girls would have been taught the female arts.
Yes, painting, needlework, piano.
That's right.
Musical instruments and things like that.
That's right. And I think as well that in the boys' schools, the masters were probably educated men themselves. But I think in the girls' schools, it could quite often be genteel ladies who found themselves in unfortunate circumstances. So they probably weren't educated people themselves, and they were literally just teaching these girls to, a bit like finishing school. You'd have been learned, deportment and small talk for the dining room and the ballroom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which knife and fork to use.
That's right, yes. And I always remember reading years ago, and it was something that just stuck in my mind, that when young men went on the grand tour and they were meeting European girls could talk about the arts and culture, and they knew a lot of languages, and they were well read. So when these young men were coming back to England and, going to balls to meet prospective brides, they found the young girls boring. So the mothers soon realised that their daughters needed to have a better grounding in education.
Well, that sounds quite logical.
Yeah.
Yes, because the better catch you'll catch. The better catch you have is quite important in those days.
That's right, yes.
Yes.
And, the other thing that we were wondering was, why was Anne sent to boarding school? Because we couldn't find a girl that was born in London that could have been her. So we know that probably she came from outside London, but her name is too common for us to trace. And it was quite funny that going back to Jane Austen and Jane Austen's novels, the girls, or some of her girls that she writes about, have been to boarding school, and they've all been to boarding school for different reasons. And
Yes.
we find that Georgiana Darcy in Pride and Prejudice, she was an orphan with two male guardians, so they sent her off to boarding school. And then Caroline Bingley and Louisa Hurst, they were born into families that were on the socially mobile, so they probably sent their daughters to school to mix with a
Yes.
better class of lady. And then we have Harriet Smith in Emma, who was
Yes.
illegitimate. So
Yes.
her father wanted to do the best for her, but he didn't want her around. Poor thing. And then we have Anne Elliot in Persuasion, who went to
Yes.
boarding school because her mother died. So our Anne could have been in boarding school for many different
Similar reason.
reasons. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You just don't know,
Yeah.
do you?
No. No.
No.
Life, life is a mystery sometimes.
It is, yes. But I was sent to boarding school, and I was sent to boarding school because my parents wanted me to have a really good, strong academic education. I don't know how much good it did for me, but you know, these schools, they probably learned to read and write, but they wouldn't have learnt sort of like Greek and Latin and algebra and a lot of the subjects those boys would have learnt. So,
Yes.
yeah. I tell you what, the females of times past, they've worked hard for us to have the life that we have today.
Yes, they did.
They did,
And
yeah.
actually, I think didn't the Bronte sisters also go to boarding school?
I don't know.
I seem to remember because I have been to Haworth where they were born and
Yeah,
lived, and I'm not quite sure, but I have a feeling they also went to boarding school because their
right,
mother died,
right,
and I have a feeling that they went to boarding school as well.
yeah. I think you must have had, money in the family to go to boarding school as opposed to
Yeah.
sort of like a dame's school. So
Yes.
maybe our Anne was from a well-to-do family. So maybe when she was in Lausanne, she wasn't there as a servant or a companion. Maybe she was there as a young bride or,
Yes.
travelling later in life. That little sketch, it's not dated, but it's obviously been done by somebody who was very skilled.
Yes. It's quite a charming little piece.
It is, isn't it? So there we are.
Yeah,
So,
I was thrilled over to me.
so did you learn to sew in school?
I did. I learnt when I was in primary school,
Right,
but I learnt before that. I had I never knew both my grandmothers.
right,
Um, my mother's mother, she passed away a few months before I was born. She
right.
had breast cancer, and she died on my mother's birthday. So my mother always had a very unhappy birthday,
Oh,
and so I used to spend a lot of time with her mother,
right.
who was really lovely. She was English, as was my grandmother,
Yes.
and I spent so much time with her because when my mother was pregnant with my sister, my mother ended up in hospital with toxemia, so she was in
Right.
hospital for a while. And then when my sister came along, she was a bit of a fussy baby. So my great-grandmother used to come and get me all the time to give my mother a rest and that. So my great-grandmother taught me to sew and to knit, and I used to spend a lot of time with her and my mother's two sisters. So
Okay.
it
So I've
was
got some photographs showing on the screen. So the lady by herself, who was that?
the lady by herself is my great-grandmother,
Right. And then the
and
lady in the trousers?
the lady, the lady with the apron
Yes.
is my grandmother,
Yeah.
and the lady in the trousers is my mother's sister, the next one to her, and that she'd probably be about 18 then, I suppose 18,
Right.
and my grandmother, that photo was probably 12 months or so before she passed away.
Right. And then the group of three ladies.
The group of three ladies is my father's mother. She died when my father was about 15.
Right.
She had kidney problems. So she's the lady in the lighter outfit. The lady on the other end
Yes.
is her sister.
Right.
The lady in the middle is their mother. So she's my great grandmother, and she was Scottish and Cornish. And you wouldn't believe, you know how I love Daphne du Maurier's Frenchman's Creek.
Yes.
Her Cornish relatives came from St. Column. And for those who don't know, the main character in Frenchman's Creek is Donna, Lady St. Column. So I thought that was quite amazing.
I'll tell you what, you know the lady in the light coloured coat with the lovely hat with the light bow, she looks very much like you.
She looks like my father.
Well, you must look like your father then.
No, I'm supposed to look like my mother, which is, I used to look like my father,
Right.
but when my mother died, I sort of morphed into my mother. But that grandmother, she was apparently quite amazing. My grandfather was telling me one day that because she was a beautiful dressmaker.
Yes.
And she could throw a piece of material on a person and cut it out, and they'd end up with this most beautiful dress. Yeah, she never put the fabric on the table to cut it out. She just cut it out. And
see, you know the lovely wedding dress that you sent me the photograph of? She made that?
No, that's my other grandmother.
Right.
Yes, that's the English one.
Right.
Yeah, that's my mother's mother.
That's a lovely photograph.
Yeah, I think she made that because she was also very talented. And she used to do beautiful embroidery, and she used to make my mother's and her two sisters' clothes.
Yeah.
So,
did you ever see that wedding dress?
No.
Oh.
No, I've seen my other grandmother, my aunt. She had it. It was absolutely beautiful. It was all handkerchief hem, and she had it. And I think my cousin has it now because my aunt died quite a few years ago of kidney problems as well.
Oh.
She had kidney cancer. So really sad.
Now you shared a photograph with me this week, didn't you? Sandra, you were so beautiful when you were, not that you're not beautiful now, but that's a stunning photograph.
I was 21.
Oh, well, that's a really lovely photograph. So I couldn't resist sharing that.
Now I'm all embarrassed.
Oh, no, you shouldn't be. It's a lovely photograph, and I'm really glad that you shared it with me. So last week we talked about the things that you had made for the children. And you sent me a lovely photograph of the dress that you made for Lachlan with the roses that were embroidered in bullion knots, which you call grub stitch. Bullion knots sounds much nicer than grub stitch.
No, I don't know why they called that.
Maybe because they look like little caterpillars.
It's beautiful. I really loved doing that dress.
Yeah.
I sort of made the pattern up as I stitched it.
It's just so beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous.
He wore that dress home from hospital.
Yes.
And then I never took any photos when he came home. But one day I was in a dressing up a doll mood, so I put it on him. So I put it on him and put him on the bed and took his photo. And the doll beside it, he said, the doll. Can you see the doll?
Oh, I haven't got that photo on the screen. I've got that, you know, the one, the beautiful close-up of the yoke.
Yes.
And I think,
No, well,
like, obviously, that photograph is taken, like, now, not when Lachlan was a baby. So that dress has lasted so well.
I know that. Well, that one is Lachlan's 22
Yeah.
now. So it's just when I was 21, my grandfather gave me this huge, big Chinese camphorwood chest, and my sister also got one when she was 21. So they've always been in this chest.
Yeah.
So when Sophia came along, I took them all out of the chest, and they were perfect, all except one shawl that my husband's mother made. It had a few little brown spots, but everything else was absolutely perfect, and all they needed was a wash.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you know, they've been hanging in the wardrobe.
Yeah.
And they were made last week or something.
Yeah.
It's quite a...
Now, in this country, we have to be careful about moths when you store fabric. And I have all my samplers are they have glass fronts and the backs are sealed so that no insects can get in. Do you have a problem in Australia with
moth?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I love shawls, you know, woolen shawls. So I have to keep them in zip bags. You know,
Yes.
Zip bags.
Yeah.
Because I have a couple of Liberty ones that my sister bought me when she'd gone to England that my mother paid for. So, you know, I've got to be very careful with those.
Yeah. So all your samplers have glass fronts as well?
Yeah, they've all got glass fronts and sealed at the back.
Yeah.
And that one day I noticed one of my, it wasn't a sampler, it was another picture that I did. And I saw this little thing on it. And
Yeah.
It was a weevil had got in behind the paper and got into the frame. So he quickly departed the scene. Yeah, but no, you've got to be very careful with the moths.
Yeah. Yeah. When I have an antique sampler come to the house, I always open them outside and have a good look, a very careful look before I bring them in, just in case. You never know. And you know, you do see where you can see like little eggs, you know, under the glass. And of course, any vibration, they wake up and they hatch then. So, you know, you have to be so careful. So the last thing we want is an infestation.
Yes, no, they're quite worrying sometimes.
Yes, I can imagine. I can imagine. So I was trying to think when I started to learn to sew, and my mother, she did a lot of sewing when we were young. She used to like making clothes for us. And I remember I had a pair of red hot pants with a bib on that she made me. And there's this photograph of me in it. I'll have to try and dig that out. And if I find it, I will be very good and I will post it so everybody can have a laugh. My grand.
That's a thing years ago.
Yeah, they were. Yes, but I was like a little. I was like a little pudding when I was young because my mother used to stuff us full of food. So, my grandmother was a wonderful, wonderful needleworker. She could crochet, she could knit, she could sew, she could embroider, she could do anything with a needle. And of course, her husband died, leaving her with a lot of children, a lot of young children, and she struggled to bring them all up, but she brought them all up very, very well. So any sort of needlework she did was out of necessity rather than for leisure. And I wish now I have the time to sort of learn and absorb and to keep it going. I wish my nana was still here. She taught me how to crochet when I was young, but then I never crocheted afterwards, and I've forgotten how to do that. So Yeah.
Yes. Now I was very fortunate that out of 8 great grandparents,
Yes.
I knew I knew 5 of them.
Right.
So all my great grandmothers all were beautiful knitters, crocheters, and in fact I have a tiny little purse that's about this big, little handbag that my mother's father's mother made, and
Oh.
I was thinking of putting it in a frame for Sophia.
Oh.
And
You'll have to show us that in another video.
oh, okay. Yeah,
Have to dig
so
it out.
just about that big and little handle,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she was a funny old lady. She had a lot of children, and her husband died when my mother was very little.
Right.
And she used to come and stay with her children for like 6 months at a time, and then move on to the next one. So she she'd do the rounds. And I always remember sitting down the back at when my auntie was, and sitting there crocheting away. But they're all very tall. My mother's family are all very tall. My grandfather's grandfather was 7 foot tall.
Oh my gosh, that is tall, isn't it?
He Scandinavian.
Oh, there we are. A few weeks ago, well, in fact, when I came back from my holiday, there was an envelope here for me, and when I opened it, I had a really lovely surprise because Sally, who's a very dear friend, sent me the exhibition catalogue for Bonnie Prince Charlie and the Jacobites. And I've been, like, when I got it, I looked through it, but I've been reading it over the last couple of weeks. And this catalogue, we talked about catalogues last week. It's just absolutely full of the most gorgeous
Wonderful.
images. Whoops, it's very difficult to show things in front of the screen because it all moves differently. But this is absolutely gorgeous, and there's some really nice sort of textiles in here as well. I wish I could get to see this exhibition, but it's in Edinburgh, which is like the opposite end of the country to Cornwall. But for anybody who wants to go and see this exhibition, it's finishing on the 12th of November. So it's to go now or you will miss it in this country. So that's a lovely exhibition catalogue that came. So thank you very much, Sally. I was very grateful to receive such a touching and thoughtful gift, actually, because we're both very much interested in Bonnie Prince Charlie and the Jacobite history. And of course, we wrote about that when we were preparing the booklet for the Old Scot. And it's been really lovely how popular the Old Scot has been. And we've seen 2 finishes. Terry and Rita have both finished the Old Scot. And I'm just showing some photographs on the screen now. And they look absolutely wonderful.
Yes, no, it's a beautiful tablet.
It is, isn't it?
And Sigrid did a wonderful job.
Sigrid and Torsten. They chart so meticulously. It's a joy to work from that chart.
Yes.
When I was producing the booklet and I was having to annotate the chart, it was just so easy to follow that it's absolutely lovely. And of course, we had so much fun doing our research on that. And of course, you went to Scotland in the winter of 2014.
Yes, we spent Christmas Day in Scotland.
Yes.
We stayed in Moffat.
Yes.
Because it's my
son
Moffat. And so we stayed in a beautiful hotel that was something that you'd think Jane Austen would live in. It was just absolutely lovely, and to spend Christmas in Scotland was lovely. I've always wanted to go to England. I have been quite a few times, and I always wanted to go in the winter and Christmas. So it's just magical. And we went to Falkirk
Right.
on Christmas Eve. And Falkirk has links to Bonnie Prince Charles, Outlander as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And in Falkirk, there's this very interesting, it's called the Falkirk Wheel, and it's the most amazing thing. It's with the canals that are in Scotland. It joins two canals, and it's like this big can opener, and it just gradually comes down. It's quite amazing.
I know. Yes.
We wanted to go for a ride on the one of the barges, but unfortunately, because it was Christmas Eve, it was all booked out with Santa Claus trips, with the children. So we missed out. The next time we go back, we'll be going to Falkirk and going for a ride on that.
And next time you come back, you're going to come down and stay with me again.
But no, I love Scotland. I can quite easily live in Scotland.
Yeah, here we are.
I like all that.
Talking of exhibition catalogues, we've both got Carol Humphrey's sampled lives. So you've had chance to look at yours now, haven't you?
Yes, but not as much as I'd like to.
No, it's a beautiful book, absolutely gorgeous. And of course, we've been researching this building.
Yes.
Because we're going to be bringing out a sampler in 2018 with a very similar building. So this book's been really quite interesting because of that. Have you got a favourite sampler?
Yes, my favourite sampler is on, hang on, where is it? Page, I've got the glasses on, getting old.
Aren't we, Jeff?
120.
Sorry, 120? 120.
Elizabeth Bates.
Oh, gosh, yes, she's beautiful. I know why you like her.
You do.
Is it anything to do with a certain Jane?
Yes, it is. But when you look at both of them,
yes,
they look similar, but there's different things,
Because you've stitched Jane Ballard, haven't you, which is a beautiful sampler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Now Jane is a joy.
Yeah. She is gorgeous. Do you know, when I look through this book, I have so many things that catch my eye. Now, this sampler on page 73, which was stitched by Elizabeth Calthorpe. Now, that panel is just absolutely gorgeous. That's on the band sampler. But the interesting thing was that Elizabeth Calthorpe, her mother was aunt to Anne Boleyn.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. So I just thought that was really, really interesting. And another favourite sampler in this book, you would normally associate it with the Goodhart collection, are the Jenin band samplers, and I just think that these are some of the most amazing samplers. Two sisters have stitched these samplers, and they're on display at Montacute House, and they are just absolutely exquisite. So that was rather nice to find a little bit in here about that. A section of this book that I really, really enjoy are about the Quaker girls, and that starts at page 171. And so many people associate Quakers just with the Ackworth school, but to me, Quakers, they just burst with colour. They really do. And in this book, Carol Humphreys, she mentions about a discovery of a group of related, mainly 17th century Quaker samplers made in the city of London. And I'm quite lucky because I have a beautiful Quaker sampler that whilst it's not from the 17th century, it is from the 1700s, and that's a beautiful sampler that has lots of really lovely colour in it. But of course, the sampler that we have reproduced, and it is a band sampler, and it is Quaker, is When Thou Art Rich. So I have the original here.
And I have the model.
Yes. And they're just both absolutely gorgeous. They really, really are. The camera doesn't do justice to what these samplers really look like. Like this was stitched in the early part of the 1700s, and yet the colour just, you know, it just bursts with colour. But very, very beautiful, isn't it? But I do believe that this sampler comes from Devon, which we explain about in the chart. So yeah, is there anything else in the sampler lives that you particularly like?
Yes, there was another one that I quite liked. That was I love schoolgirl samplers.
Yes.
More than samplers. And so I like her name is Susanna Gillette on 119.
119. Oh yeah, she's gorgeous, isn't she?
That one?
Yep, that one. Oops.
Yeah.
You're better at holding it up to the screen than I am.
Yes, no, it's beautiful.
She is gorgeous, isn't she? I love a red house on a sampler.
Yes. This is the third book that I have that Carol's written, and each one is absolutely a wonderful book.
Yeah.
I have the needleprint Quaker book, schoolgirl book, and I love going through it.
That book is so expensive to buy.
Yes.
Because it's out of print. I have a very good friend who has that book, and she lends it to me every now and again. And I say to her, I said, do you really want it back? Can I keep it? And she says, no. When she dies, she's left it to me in her will. But I said, I much prefer to have her as a friend than the book.
Now I'm very lucky that I have all the needleprint books. And
yeah.
Each one. Well, when I think as each book came out, they got better and better, and they're absolutely, each one is absolutely stunning.
I've actually got, because I've been researching this weekend, I've actually got the Good Heart book.
Yes.
And that is just absolutely jam-packed with the most beautiful, beautiful samplers. But again, this book is out of print, and another very expensive book to get, but that one's beautiful. I've been spending a bit of time this week in a bookstore, which I was very lucky. Bertie just curled up and went to sleep as I was browsing. And because I've been doing so much research in London, because of like the three lots of samplers, I picked up Londoners, which is a really interesting book. It's jam-packed with lots of tidbits, and 2,000 Years, the City of London and its People. And it always amazes me how you can go into a second-hand book, and these two books cost me £10 altogether. It's quite amazing. But the other thing I found that's really fascinating is, I have to put my glasses on for this, they're bound copies, and they're very old, and they're bound copies of the Journal of the Embroiderers Guild, and they go back, well, this one, it starts in 1950, and it's got all the magazines bound in this edition. So there were 3 books, and I'm going to have great fun going through these. That one's just got a lovely sort of picture about a DNC advert.
Yes.
So, and Millward's Needles. Do you remember seeing those sort of adverts?
Yes, yes, I can remember those.
So this is going to be very, very interesting when I start to read it. And as I plough through it, if I find sort of interesting things, I'll share those with you.
Okay.
Oh, look. Practical hints on glove making. So this is going to be a very interesting book to look through.
Well, I suppose when you think about it, glove making was a very important pastime because ladies used to wear gloves when they went out.
Absolutely.
Visit. What is it? They used to go calling.
Calling cards. Yeah.
Afternoon tea with friends. They go calling. Oh, how wonderful!
Oh, I can't get this right. Old Glam's fabric, individually created for beautiful embroidery. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't heard of that one.
I'm sure somebody who's watching probably has. Look how they used to advertise sewing thread.
Amazing. I like the picture on the other page.
Oh, that's the Embroiderers Guild postal course.
Is it?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Let's have a look what it says.
Take a nice, look nice on a sampler.
Okay, the postal course lessons will alternate between lessons in which simple design forms an important part and those concerned with stitchery suitable for definite forms and the materials and the methods that is best to use. And it's a 5-shilling fee, but 7 shillings and 6pence for non-members.
Probably a lot of money.
Probably an awful lot of money. That's an interesting little article. When the Viceroy Tapestry.
All right, yes.
Oh, I love looking at things like this and following them through. So that's going to be very, very interesting. So, there we are. I'm going to go to bed and read my book, Sandra.
Okay. Lots of new things to tell me about.
Yes. More things to natter about.
Yes.
Yes. Needlework Natters about needlework natters.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, have a good Monday. We've got Outlander tonight. Oh, your night, you've got Outlander. I'll watch it tomorrow. So
yes.
Enjoy, and I'll catch up with you again.
Okay.
Okay, it's been lovely nattering. Nighty night.
Night. See you later.